I've been preaching this for 13 years, and I'm amazed how many people do not have a plan. They have no plan whatsoever for their financial life. And some of them say, I got it in my head. But the problem with having it in your head is your head's not perfect. And you never know, you might bang your head like I did last year.
Welcome to the Physician Sense Podcast, a podcast designed specifically for physicians, offering a breakdown of complex financial topics to help you develop your financial IQ, further your financial journey, and improve your well-being. Whether you're a medical student, resident, fellow, or attending physician, you're sure to learn something new that will benefit your journey. And now your hosts, Chad Chubb and Tyler Olson.
Welcome to another episode of the Physician Sense Podcast. I am your co-host, Chad Chubb, with my fantastic co-host, the one, the only, Tyler Olson. Happy New Year to you all, and we are starting off 2025 with a bang. The one, the only, Jim Dahle, aka the White Coat Investor, is with us today to get the year started. It's going to be a fun one. We got some New Year's resolutions. Who doesn't love those? We're going to talk a little bit about WC Icon coming up as well. So we have one of the best agendas, the best agenda of the year by far to start the year. So we're going to get into it. Jim, we really can't thank you enough. This is kind of one of those pinch me moments where I'm thinking, out of all the years that we've worked together, now I'm hosting a podcast with Tyler where you're our guest. I can't believe it. So we really can't thank you enough for jumping on here to start the year with us.
It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, of course. So today's episode, we're going to really focus on New Year's resolutions. We're not going to let Tyler start because of what he gave us in the show notes. But our goal today here is to give you some ideas. They don't have to be perfect. Kind of the conversation before we hit record was, sometimes these work, sometimes they don't work. So our goal is to each give you 3 each. We're going to add some context to it. We're going to jump around a little bit. We don't know what they are. Jim did not send us a list. Tyler did not send me a list. No one knows what we have here. So we have no idea what we're getting into. So we're going to let our guest get started. Jim, first one, what should the listeners, the viewers be thinking about as we start 2025 today?
I think the number one resolution that everybody ought to have on their list, financial resolution, obviously, if they don't already have one, is to put a financial plan in place this year. I'm amazed how many people do not have a plan. They have no plan whatsoever for their financial life. And it's amazing to me. I poll my audience all the time and it's like 50%. And I'm like, I've been preaching this for 13 years and people still don't have the plan. And some of them say, I got it in my head. But the problem with having it in your head is your head's not perfect. And you never know, you might bang your head like I did last year. But you don't want to just have it in your head. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, if you put it on paper, you can go back and review it later. You can make changes to it. It's not like it's set in stone, right? But you can go back and review it later. And I think that's worth a lot, particularly when a big, nasty bear market comes along every few years. The second reason, though, to write it down is it exposes gaps in the plan. It exposes gaps in your knowledge. It exposes gaps in what you've thought about going forward. And then you can fill those gaps. And I think it's a really important process to put this in place. And if you can do this yourself, great. Do it yourself. If you need some help doing it, hire a professional, take our course, whatever, get some help, but get a plan in place one way or another this calendar year. And you'll be glad you did. You'll be amazed how much better your results are when you're actually following a plan with your finances.
I love that. Writing down anything really changes the makeup of it, the workability, feasibility. It's just, and I find that relatable because I do that a lot. Like I think in my mind, like I know what needs to be done. Like even like, obviously financial planning is, critical and like something that we all talk about very much. But even something simpler, like I need to, like I've got a mouse problem in my garage. It's separate from our house and it's kind of next to some woods. And I've been thinking about all the things that need to be done, the steps that need to be done for, a few months. And I was like, wintertime will be worse. So I'll get it done. I didn't actually start taking any action until I just took out a notepad and I wrote down steps 1, 2, 3 of the first few things that I needed to do. And lo and behold, I took care of them yesterday. So it works.
It is key. You got to get it down. I'm trying to get into the journaling phase and writing down instead of typing more and trying to stay away from a computer. So I couldn't agree more. We did not cue that one up for Jim. Jim went with that first. I don't want you to think that, oh, it's run by financial planners. We get it. Again, we don't know our list. So, Tyler, what do you got? What's on yours?
We live in a world that revolves around debt for most people. And I think that when people allow themselves to be educated on what debt is, how to be smart about it in their own decisions, it makes a huge difference, not just in the actual results, but in their quality of life when they still don't have it all done and resolved with debt. So educating yourselves on debt and how to manage it is the first thing that came to mind for me. I think of the residents and fellows that I know who come and they ask questions either on Twitter or like through questions they post here to the podcast, where they're asking, they're like, I've got this much debt and like I'm in PGY2 and like I don't know what in the world is going to happen. And they think that the world is coming to an end. And it's understandable because they don't yet know how debt works and they don't know the ways in which it can be handled. And with a 10-minute conversation, understanding some basic fundamentals about debt and what can happen as their track continues, it is like night and day in terms of their disposition. Something that was like a huge, heavy rock that they like couldn't do anything with, like except just to carry it. All of a sudden, it becomes so much lighter with that knowledge. And it doesn't take, like, it's not something that requires a tremendous amount of money or time investment. I hope that people continue to listen to our podcast. Go like to, White Coat Investor, your page is very helpful with regards to managing debt. Coming on social media and asking questions on Twitter. Like, if they just go to a few of those places, they know that they can get the right information. They can let go of so much of that anxiety. And yeah, like they'll get rid of it someday, but right now they can also have like dividends, so to speak, of like happiness and contentment. That was first one for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great option. The anxiety it provokes is pretty profound. You're right about that. And all they need to know is that this is going to go away. You are not stuck with this forever. And this is how it's going to go away. And obviously I think you ought to have a written plan. This ought to be part of your written plan. What's going to happen with that debt? And once you realize that there's a plan for it and that the amount you have is very reasonable for what your income's going to be or is already, then the anxiety melts away. And all of a sudden you can focus on other parts of your plan and frankly, more important parts of your life than any of your finances.
I'm taking a different approach here for my list. When I do my presentations, one of my best jokes is about date nights. And I always jokingly say to our physicians, you all think you're going to lose half your income due to malpractice lawsuit. But in reality, you're going to lose half your income or half your assets, I should say, to a divorce. So I am a big fan of date nights. So my resolution would be to schedule at least a monthly date with your spouse, significant other. If this doesn't apply to you yet, someday it may. But I am amazed by how many forget just the simple things, right? And having those date nights. And maybe it's a nice dinner. Maybe it's just coffee. Maybe it's, just having time together and the kids aren't around the house and you're just, outside taking a walk together. It doesn't have to be crazy. Maybe it's a Barry's workout class or something. You get two wins on that one. One of my resolutions would be monthly dates, date nights, date mornings, date afternoons with your spouse, significant other, because again, it's not exactly in your financial plan, but it is an important part of your financial plan. You do not want to get divorced. One spouse is probably the best long-term tool you could have to having a full net worth for a very long period of time. So my first one, a little bit of curveball in there, is dates. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, the statistics are very clear, right? Married people, on average, build more wealth than single people who build more wealth than divorced people. And it goes in that order. Every survey they ever do about it, that's the order it comes off in. Marriage is generally a good thing if you only do it once, as far as your finances go.
Exactly. Jim, back to you.
My next one, many of you maybe have heard this or already know this, but 2024 had a pretty remarkable event in it for me that involved, a pretty serious fall in a very bad place. And as a result of that, I was temporarily disabled. And so my resolution, this second one for me, is to get disability insurance. If you rely on your own income, or if anybody else relies on your income, especially if anybody else relies on your income, you need to have disability insurance in place. And you don't necessarily need to stress about, every single little aspect of it. Is this one a little better than this one? Should I pay a little more for this rider or that rider or whatever? You need to get something in place, because most of the really bad disabilities that are going to keep you from working, falling off a mountain and breaking a whole bunch of bones and getting a head injury, whatever those sorts of things are in your life, they're all going to pay, right? You're going to be disabled under any of those kind of situations. But you want something, because going from having an income that's significant, like most of you out there have, $10, $15, $20, $30,000 a month, whatever it is, to no income at all is dramatic change in your finances. And disability insurance is how you pad that, at least in the long term. In the short term, you can often muddle through with an emergency fund and that sort of thing. And thankfully, my disability is of the short-term variety. But it wouldn't have taken much more than what happened to me for this to have been a long-term disability. So please, if you haven't gotten around to this, it's time to get your disability insurance in place. I'm amazed how few people buy this at what I think is the right time to buy it, which is as an intern. Way too many people, I think, wait even to the end of residency. And I think that's already too late. People get diseases during residency, things that make it so they don't qualify for disability insurance, or they have exclusions on their disability insurance. People take up hobbies like scuba diving, rock climbing, and flying, and things like that keep you from qualifying for disability insurance. And of course, every now and then, a resident becomes disabled. So get this stuff early. If you don't have it yet, today's the day. Maybe not today. I guess if you're listening to this on January 1st, everybody's closed. But, this week's the week. It's time to get this stuff done and quit putting it off. And if you haven't looked at your policy in a long time, but you have one, maybe review it, make sure it's still adequate for you. And maybe if you've been doing really well and now you're financially independent, maybe it's time for you to drop your disability insurance. You don't have to keep this thing forever, but you do need it while you're still relying on your income.
I was able to facilitate someone getting rid of theirs. Actually, they're 61, and we ran the numbers, and they don't need it anymore. And that was a happy day. Actually, Jim, I had a question for you, just like a hypothetical. Since I think I've run into this, I've oscillated a bit over the years, but now I'm pretty set on trying to encourage residents to get personal disability insurance as soon as they can. But imagine you have like a resident whose savings rate is like $350 a month. If they're starting at zero savings, they just say they're at zero, they've got no emergency fund, nothing, but their savings rate going forward is going to be $350, and say their disability is going to cost them $120. How would you rationalize getting disability insurance in that situation? Would you have them save up some cash first and then get it? Or would you have them do a little bit of both because, technically they've got, a couple $100 on top of the $120 that the disability insurance would cost?
I think I'd step back for a second and really take a good look at their lifetime financial picture, right? When do doctors get rich? They don't get rich as residents. If you're trying to get rich as a resident, you're probably doing it wrong. You get rich as an attending, right? As an attending, you get a huge raise. You're going from an income of 60 or 65,000 to an income of 180 or 250 or 350 or $550,000. You can do dramatically more on $400,000 than you can on $65,000, financially speaking. Even if you spend a little bit more than maybe you should, you can still save a ton of money and make up for a lack of saving for retirement, for your other goals, whatever that you did during residency. What you can't do if you become disabled as a resident is go back and buy disability insurance. So I think it's a bigger priority actually than, maybe even an emergency fund, right? This is a really important part of your financial life as a resident. Getting disability insurance. If you're married or have kids or somebody else is relying on your income, term life insurance. When I wrote my second book, Financial Boot Camp, chapter 1 is disability insurance. Chapter 2 is life insurance. I think they're that important. I put them right at the top because it doesn't matter what else you're doing if those risks show up in your life. And they do from time to time. It's obviously not most people, but it is a significant chunk of people. And so I worry less about your savings rate as a resident. I worry less about you maxing out your Roth IRA. I even worry less about you getting a 401k match if your residency offers one than I do about you picking up that insurance early in your career. This is when you need it most. Your need for disability insurance is never greater than when you're a resident. And that's just not the case for so many other chunks of your financial plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is even when you perfectly said too, this is where maybe doing that increasing premium makes a lot of sense too. So if cash flow is tight, which we know it is, that's one of the times where it can make sense. This is one of the times where sometimes we'll even say, hey, a shorter elimination period could make more sense here because you don't have that emergency fund yet. So just knowing that these are things that you kind of put in to fit your cash flow now, but then once you get that attending pay, get it back to a level premium, probably at that point, maybe even start to increase the elimination period again to try to lower that premium a little bit, self-insure a little bit. But I'm happy, again, we didn't know the list coming into this, but Jim, I'm happy that you noted that one because I feel like a lot of things in financial planning, especially in the risk side of things, even like the estate planning side of things, people know that it's important, but until they know someone closer to them that had an event, and obviously your voice in the physician community, it's one of those where it won't happen to me. It won't happen to me. And it's just one of those crazy freak accidents where, oh, shoot, it did happen. And this is one that you can't be reactive with, right? You got to be proactive here. So again, not knowing your list and not wanting you to ever go through the event that you did. But I do think that Perry's will carry a very powerful message for a lot that were maybe treading water on, well, I'll get it, maybe next year or the next year or the year after that. So that was a good one to get in there for sure.
Yeah. And the truth is, Chad, the residents can't actually afford as much disability insurance as they ought to have, right? Yeah. They won't even sell you a benefit of $10,000 or $15,000 a month, which is probably what you need so that your family can live, a similar lifestyle to what they were going to be able to live, assuming you were able to complete your residency and move on into work. And so they're only going to sell you a benefit of like $5,000. And so, yes, you do need to get some sort of a future purchase option so you can increase it when you're an attending. You're not going to be able to afford as much as you want, but get something in place because if you get disabled, your other alternative is qualifying for Social Security disability, which is not a lot of money. And it's actually pretty hard to qualify for. And so you basically can't be able to do any work at all to get Social Security disability. Whereas you buy a nice individual policy that's own occupation and you can't practice your specialty, it's going to pay you. And it's going to pay you until you're 65. It's like the guy you mentioned, Tyler, that canceled his at 61, right? Well, at 61, it's hard to get real excited about disability insurance. It's probably only going to pay you for 4 or 6 years at that point. But you get disabled at 32. This is your income stream for the next 3 decades. It's a big deal.
I was thinking too that, like how you mentioned the benefit that they can get is only like 5,000. I often get pushback at that point where they say, well, it's not that valuable to me because if I get disabled as a resident, the most I'll ever get is that 5,000 a month. And of course, that's far better than nothing. But they're looking ahead to the $10,000, $15,000 benefit that they almost could have achieved, but they can't. And sure, there are life circumstances where if a disability prevented them from being able to attain an attending job, then they wouldn't be able to qualify for such higher benefits. But that scenario is not very likely. The more likely scenario is that if they didn't buy any disability insurance at all, and then they go to get it as an attending, and they've had some health issues that make their disability insurance extremely expensive, or they even get denied, now they get nothing. At least like if they have that health issue occur after they've purchased the $5,000 benefit, if they've added on that future increase option rider, they can scale up and pay more for it, and they can just avoid that medical underwriting later on. So I'm glad that we're talking about this because there's a lot of misunderstandings around this. And so residents, get yourself covered for sure.
The other thing doctors don't realize is that the insurance company cares about stuff that neither you nor your doctor care about, right? Little ditzel medical problems that you don't think are anything, that are very unlikely to ever cause you any sort of an issue, all of a sudden will make it so the insurance company won't sell you a policy. So you really do need to get it before you have anything. If you're worried that you have anything at all and you have access to a guaranteed standard issue policy, get that in place first. Then go get the fully underwritten policy that probably provides better coverage, probably a little bit less expensive too. But if you have anything at all, look for a GSI policy at your institution.
Tyler? What do you got? What's number 2?
Commit to spending money on something that makes you feel alive and good. Within the confines of an effectively written and implemented financial plan, a major piece of that is directing money to a place that you can do whatever the heck you want with. But I see time and again that a lot of physicians struggle to actually move forward on that, to go on that vacation, to buy that home gym equipment that they wanted to and that they've directed money to. The money's sitting there and they'll worry, but what if I need it? And I think it probably is a combination of things, one of which is likely just habits, years and years of living on very little. And that is an understandable mental impact. But if you've written a plan where you have organized funds that are helping you to be responsible for your future self, with money going for retirement, money going toward college if you've got kids, money going toward long-term care expenses, whatever that list of responsible saving is, if you've done that and you are also directing a sum of money toward a separate account, and this would apply to me, trainees and attendings. It's just the scale is much different. But, on the rare golden weekend that the resident has to go do something, if they've made a plan where they have a few $100s set aside to do something nice for themselves, they should spend that money. If an attending has done that with with their plan so that they can go on a trip to Southeast Asia and the money's sitting there, they should do that, because time is not, we can't recoup that time. We can, I think it's probably a bit, I don't know if this is brash to say, but like, we can always make more money is like a thing that we can say sometimes. And it's technically accurate, even if that's not guaranteed, but we definitely cannot create more time and experiences. So if you've got that organized within your plan, you need to spend that money, for the quality of your life.
That's a good one too, Tyler, because we always call it a forced vacation budget. Like when we start working with clients, we always tell them, like, we want a forced vacation budget. Like, we want you to put money aside so that you know that it's there. Now, most of our clients being attendings, but it's just that guilt-free spending that, you can go book the $20,000 Disney trip or the $10,000 weekend here, or, just a long weekend for, a couple $100, whatever the case would be. Having that money set aside just kind of frees up that mental room to say, like, I can do it. And I think it comes from those years of training where you had to be so frugal that even when the money starts to come in, bank accounts get larger, investment accounts get larger, you still kind of have that, like, sure, this feels like a lot. So I think that's a really good one to have on there, because it's just one of those ones where it's another one where it feels like it's always put off. Like, well, we'll do the big trip next year. Now let's do it next year, then next year. So I think putting that budget in place, having that forced spending mechanism can go a long way.
I think about money activities in our lives, and I think there's 5 big ones, and you really need to become good at all of them. Earning, saving, investing, spending, and giving. And they all require work, right? None of these are super easy to do. And for a lot of people out there, one of the hardest ones is spending, especially if they're a natural saver. They live very frugally in their 20s and maybe well into their 30s. Now they're starting to accumulate quite a bit of wealth. And guess what? You don't want to be the richest person in the graveyard. You need to learn how to spend some money in a way that will actually improve your life and the lives of those around you. And an example from this weekend, we decided we were going to go backpacking. And for whatever reason, permits were available to go someplace we wanted to go for a long time, which is the Havasupai Indian Reservation down in northern Arizona. You're basically hiking into the lower end of the Grand Canyon. And this is a big money maker for the tribe, right? They charge everybody that comes down there $455 to go backpacking, right? You're going down there and you're sleeping in a crappy campground next to all the other campers, right? It's not even that nice of a campground, but it's $455 a head. So I took 3 of my kids and my wife and myself. I mean, it's $2,500 or most of $2,500 to go backpacking, something we could do free in most other places in Utah. And, but it's an example of being able to spend some money to go a place we'd always wanted to go to see some pretty cool terrain. And, in that case, it's, these beautiful waterfalls. They have these turquoise blue waterfalls in the middle of the Arizona desert. But, it's a way that years ago I wouldn't have spent the money. I wouldn't have spent it. And now I don't think twice about that sort of thing because we put our financial ducks in a row. We can spend that kind of money, and it's time to spend money on stuff. It's either that or I'm going to die with it eventually. So that's just an example, and I'm sure it doesn't apply to everybody listening to this, but there is an example in your life where spending some money can make you a little bit happier, and you've got your financial ducks in a row. Go ahead and spend the money and don't feel guilty about it. That's what it's for. That's why you saved it, was so you could spend more later.
I'll build on the backpacking idea. I got a little bit nervous adding this one because this is probably also the most failed New Year's resolution for everybody. But I listed physically active. But hear me out. My thinking with physically active is the amount of individuals that work their butts off their entire lives to retire and not be in good health or unfortunately have a premature death is still staggering to me. You put all this time and effort in to save up appropriately to enjoy retirement, but the one thing you neglect through all of that is your physical well-being. So a little bit of a different twist because I know the gym membership one doesn't hold up well. But if that's not going to work out for you, change it up, right? Maybe it is something more like backpacking. Maybe it is some type of workout class. We saw our big Peloton phase right through COVID. Maybe it's Peloton's coming back for you. But staying physically active, I know I used this earlier, proactive versus reactive, being proactive on your health, whether that's routine blood work or, proper supplementation and things of that nature. I think it's such a little thing that we kind of lose track of, but it's the most important thing in terms of you do all this to then retire. But if you don't have one, your health, but two, we want to tour, right? We want to go to Italy for the first time. We go to Europe for the first time. You got to walk a lot, right? If you don't have the physical capacity to do that, what the heck are we doing this for? So again, a little bit nervous, put in physical activity in there, but I do think it's a good one when you think long-term, obviously for the benefits of being physically active, but two, thinking about retirement planning and actually enjoying all that hard work and effort you put into all those working years.
Yeah, for sure. There will come a time in your life when wealth is not the limiting factor in what you can do, right? It's going to be the time you have left. It's going to be the health you enjoy.
Yeah, I recently was able to connect with a personal trainer, and getting that sort of support has been life-changing. So in terms of supporting that sort of goal, getting help if you need it. I know that I do, and I don't know how long I will, but I'm just kind of running with it for now. But as with money goals and physical goals, a lot of times, and this actually reminds me of something, there's a lot of content online where people talk about how they overcame something and how they push through and how they develop mental toughness to be able to accomplish certain things. And we have to take action on our own goals in order for them to succeed. But in so many cases, our success and people's success in general is because of the people around us and being able to surround ourselves with the right people. So again, we do have to be proactive about the environment that we create, but we don't have to feel like we've got to do it all on our own either.
Love that. Jim, your third and final.
All right. My third and final is that I think you ought to stop collecting investments. A lot of people, their portfolio consists of a collection. It's a collection of investments. It might be 12 individual stocks, might be 22 mutual funds. It might be a little bit of Bitcoin, a syndication here, rental property for a place you used to live in there. And you just end up collecting stuff as you go. You see a cool investment, you hear something cool about it, and you buy it. And the truth is, you don't have to invest in everything to be successful. There are no called strikes in investing. You can let them just go right by, and you can wait for the next one. And I think people don't realize this, and they just make a mistake they just start buying every shiny thing they see. And there are tax consequences down the road when you do this, right? You're eventually going to have to get rid of these things, and you're going to have a mess to clean up. And that's probably going to involve some capital gains, hopefully some capital gains, maybe just a bunch of capital losses. But, it's a mess to clean up. And a lot of people wander in to see a financial advisor after 10 years of collecting investments. And the advisor's like, what are you doing? You could have gotten by with 4 or 5 or 6 mutual funds. And instead you've got 50 different investments. And so that's my recommendation for number 3 is just stop collecting. There needs to be a reason behind the things you're buying, a reason that's still going to be there 15 years from now. And you need a little bit more intentionality in your portfolio design, in your investments than far too many investors are using.
Yeah, I could put that on a billboard. The amount of clients, especially when you hit like a certain threshold of net worth, you're thinking like, okay, well, I hit 1, 2, 3 million. What do the rich people do now? Like, what do I do next? And you're just like, well, to be honest, you can just keep doing this and keep it very simple and just get richer and not make it overwhelming. I wish we had better data on like what number that always does where clients are like, well, now what? We have to change it up. We have to do something. So that's a perfect way. I actually like that way of you saying the no called strikes. But boy, we see that one quite a bit where you hit this number and you're like, we have to do something different at this point, right? There has to be something cooler out there. Like, well, not really. I mean, there are other things, but we don't have to go collect those per se to make sure that your plan stays on the right path going forward.
The shiny object that came across my plate yesterday was a reinsurance fund. It's kind of a private fund where you're investing in reinsurance. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a unique asset class. That's kind of cool. But you know what? I'm going to say the same thing about this as I said with Bitcoin. I'm going to watch it from the sidelines. Let's see what this does over the next decade. There's no rule that says I have to invest in it.
Chad, you're missing out on an opportunity, though. You could sell complexity. Don't you want to do that?
When our clients ask us that, I say, I may be putting myself out of business here, but it doesn't have to be complicated. You actually hire us to make it easier for you and take out the technical jargon. Even before we got on here, we got into a whole captive insurance conversation with a client, and we're like, to each their own, and there's pros and cons to everything. And, from our side, is always just explaining, right? Here's the pros and cons. What are you most comfortable with? But again, shiny object, but also hit a certain net worth. You're like, there has to be something neater. I heard this from this doc and then this doc and this doc. So yes, we could sell complexity, but we're going to veer away from that one. We're going to keep it simple because simple is beautiful in the long run.
I think another important thing to mention on this note is that people may come across portfolio models from the asset management space that look very complicated. And, obviously every individual need is different, and the quality of the asset management and financial planning services varies widely. But just any of you who are impacted by what you've seen, or even by what your own financial advisor does for you, if you've got an account statement that's miles long because you've got so many different types of assets, that is not inherent value. Man, I saw this one report like a few weeks back, and it's just so complicated, and it's for like this older couple, and it's just way complex, and like way heavy in equities too. They're like in their 90s. Anyway, like all this information, all this data, it makes it look like, oh yeah, we're doing something really valuable here. Look at how complex this is. But it just ends up stressing them out and, costing them money. And like they're falling behind the market too in this particular situation. So simple is so much better. I totally agree with you guys.
Part of the issue, I don't actually have a problem. If somebody wants a complex portfolio, they want 8 or 10 asset classes in their portfolio, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. The problem is when you're a doctor, you got to implement this across 5, 6, 7, 8 different, retirement accounts, HSAs. You got a personal and spousal backdoor Roth and 3 accounts at your employer and 2 of your spouses. It becomes really complex then. It just becomes nutso to implement a complicated portfolio across multiple retirement accounts. And that's what most doctors are dealing with, is a complicated retirement account scenario. And so when the portfolio is simpler, it makes it actually manageable, and often manageable by yourself.
Tyler, what do you got for your third resolution? Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to like this one, Chad. No, I think you will.
No, I'm nervous.
So this stems from what I had told you guys earlier, and that is I have a critical eye toward even the concept of the New Year's resolution, because it is it's a feel good idea and concept there's a lot of peer pressure in a positive way that comes at a specific time. But because we all know that such aspirations can fall short because we're going to fall to our systems. We want to, what's the phrasing?
You revert to your training.
Yeah. You revert to your training, or like, we don't want to make a plan based on our aspirations. We want to make a plan based on our systems. And by systems, I mean our habits and what we are capable of doing on a sustainable basis. And so that's going to vary by person. And of course, there's obviously it can be helpful to be like, hey, like, what do you want to start doing differently this coming year? That can be a helpful conversation. But because it's so common for life to throw a fire at us, that's very common for that to happen at any given time, is to set a monthly check-in with yourself on the things that you value most to change. See, because like if you're thinking now, I want to do this thing, or I want to change this thing, you want to create the opportunity to support yourself with a system that will bring back to mind what those values are on a regular basis. Because what falls short doesn't mean that it's lost forever. It just means that maybe some other stuff came up, but you'll have an opportunity to reconvene with your family or just on your own if you have it in your schedule to say like, hey, I need to take a few minutes, like a business meeting with myself, to like look back at like, what am I trying to accomplish right now? And look back at the steps that you had taken. I've found that when I've done that, cause I am inclined to like aspire to something like really fantastic. And like, I've got this, in our backyard, I have this cedar wood climbing structure that I have built. And the foundation of it was like when we moved out east here, we were moving to a property that's not really good for, like one of those typical playgrounds or play sets for kids. Because we got a little kid, and he's like, but what, like, will I get a play set there? And I was like, I'm going to build you one. I just aspired to do it. And if you ask my wife, she's like, this is a much bigger project than you had anticipated. And the only reason why it succeeded was not because I was like, I'm going to get this done and it's just going to be done in like a few weeks. It took months, but it was only because I had a regular check-in with myself with that goal, as well as some others that I had throughout the year, to make sure that I would be like, okay, yeah, I didn't quite get done what I wanted to, but where am I at now? And what can I do now to take the next step? And whatever our goals are, we should be doing that.
Well said.
Yeah, I think breaking things, bigger goals into smaller goals is important on so many different levels. So for my last one, I'm doing improving financial literacy. And the best way you can improve financial literacy is meet us in San Antonio for WCICon 2025. All joking aside, I love this conference. Obviously, this year, Tyler and I will be speaking. I spoke in the past. I don't even think Jim knows. I may have told Jim this before, but even after the conferences, I don't even do this for financial conferences. I will actually go back and watch a lot of the replays, because one of the questions we get quite a bit from other financial advisors on, like, hey, how do we get into this niche? Like, we want to work with doctors too. What do we do? I'll usually bring up the conference, because I'm always saying, if you want to see what physicians are worried about or what questions they have, it's not, an investment symposium. It's going to be so many different topics, asset protection, real estate planning, some financial planning certainly going to be mixed in there too, CME, financial wellness, well-being. There's so many topics in there. So, I'll lead that as a segue into our final section here, just kind of hyping up the conference. Jim, what should possible attendees, if we have to sell them before February 26th in San Antonio, what's our sales pitch here? What's our elevator pitch?
I mean, the sales pitch is pretty easy. This is the premier physician financial conference in the world. I mean, it really is. It's a wonderful conference. We've been doing this since 2018. And, we had to do it completely virtually 1 year, obviously, in the middle of the pandemic. But most years we have a virtual option for those who are like, I can't travel, but I still want to catch this stuff. You can do it virtually. The truth is, most people who watch it virtually come in person the next year, because the in-person experience is just way better. And people come, and I thought originally back in the day when I started this, I was like, I want people to be able to use their CME money. So we'll include some wellness content so they can qualify for that. And the truth is, the wellness content is at least as popular as the financial content. Docs in mid-career are burned out. The burnout rate's now 50% plus. In my specialty of emergency medicine, it's over 60%. I mean, people are burned out and they need techniques. They need mindset shifts, the things that will help them to deal with their burnout. And obviously being financially well, building wealth gives you lots of options that can help defeat your burnout. And so that's still a huge part of the conference, right? And I think, as I recall, your presentation is going to be about being tax savvy. And there's lots of presentations like that at WCICon as well. And, but it's a great conference because it's probably the only medical conference you've ever been to where it's more than one specialty. So there's doctors and, dentists, and there's oncologists, and there's, pediatricians and family practitioners and emergency docs and spine surgeons. So it's really cool to have a dentist on one side and a nephrologist on the other side of you. And you've never been to a conference with these sorts of people, at least since you were an undergraduate or medical school. And so that part of it's really cool as well. But my favorite part is just knocking off about 4:00 every day and going and having fun. So we plan all these other activities on the side, go play, pickleball or golf, or, go to the wine tasting or whatever. There's all these activities planned all afternoon and evening that allows you to continue the social interaction, build a network, and really talk to people, because these are your people. You probably don't have anybody at the hospital you can talk to about money, but you can talk to everybody at this conference about money. And so that's what I really love about it. This year, it's in San Antonio. This is our first time doing it, not on one of the two coasts. I guess this is close to, the third coast, but we're going to try it in the hill country of San Antonio. It's a beautiful facility. This is a resort you're coming to. It's a nice place to be, and it's a great place to sit back for a few days and think about what you're trying to accomplish with your life and your career. It's February 26th through March 1st, 2025. Obviously, the earlier you sign up, the better. This is for you. But you can sign up for, the virtual conference if you wanted to on day 2 of the conference if you wanted to. But sign up early. Trust me, it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm excited to go. As you know, Jim, of course, I've never been to the conference, so this will be my first time. Chad's energy and yours, it's good anticipation. I'm looking forward to it.
I didn't have to do a big sales pitch. Tyler got excited when I said, "Hey, you want to throw in some presentations together?" Tyler was all in. So yeah, I think one of the things that stood out most to me at the conferences I've been at, Jim, has always been when you're going from one event to the next or one presentation to the next, the amount of side conversations you see where people are just sitting in chairs off to the side. To your point, it can be an awkward conversation to talk money in the hospital cafeteria because others might not want to have that conversation. But in this setting, everyone's there to have a conversation, to learn, and really just whether it's finance or I know you guys get pretty serious about your pickleball too. I remember walking past that in Arizona. I was like, this isn't just all fun and games here. There's some serious bragging rates on the line. So I even remember, I know you guys do the run as well. So there's all sorts of fantastic stuff. So we're certainly excited to get down there in person. I think too, just with the New Year's resolution, all joking aside on the financial literacy, you really couldn't start off your year with a better jump start to your financial literacy and just such a wide range of topics as well. So there you have it. I mean, there's your 2025 resolutions. From 3 relatively savvy individuals. So do what you want with them, but that's a good list right there. Tyler, anything you want to add in closing? Jim, any final thoughts here before we call it a show?
I guess we ought to tell them where they can learn more about WCICon. The technical name is the Physician Wellness and Financial Literacy Conference, but the place to go to sign up if you're really interested is WCIEvents.com. So I guess we ought to tell them that.
We'll put that link in the show notes too. We'll have that everywhere for you guys. So that'll be easy to find. Click on that, register. Tyler, anything to add in there?
I really appreciate your personal thoughts on some things today, Jim. I got to know you better, and I appreciate the energy that you bring toward these things. Some days ago, I've people asked, they're like, how can what doctors do? Obviously, what doctors do save lives. And I think that what we talk about, if it's implemented properly, can save, if not, not necessarily lives in the same way, but quality of life for sure. And appreciate how you highlighted the action that is within the means of doctors today. So thank you for the work you do.
I think you're downplaying what you do for a second here, Tyler. I mean, burnout is very prevalent in medical circles. And one of the treatments for burnout is to have your financial ducks in a row. So you have options, things you can change about your career, things you can change about your financial life. And burnout becomes closely related to depression, becomes closely related to suicidality. So I truly believe that just teaching doctors how to manage their finances actually does save lives. I think it probably does. And so don't downplay too much what you're doing. This is really important and really powerful information that you're getting out there, helping people to be financially literate and a little bit more savvy in things that seem maybe not that important, but really are very important in the end.
Thanks, Jim. We really can't thank you enough for jumping on here with us and really just giving us all your knowledge too. Obviously, we don't have to sell it too much, but if you don't know of the White Coat Investor, one of the best resources out there. We always gear towards physicians, but really, high income professionals. It's a great site to learn a lot. So Jim, we can't thank you enough. Again, really a pinch me moment that you're on our podcast. So thank you for being a guest, and we will see you in San Antonio here in a little bit. So we appreciate it. Thanks, Jim.
You're very welcome. It's wonderful to be here.
This information is for general purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific professional, financial, or tax advice, as individual concerns vary. Please see a financial professional, CPA, and/or an attorney in regards to your own individual situation. Wealth Deals advisory services and financial planning offered through Vicus Capital Inc., a federally registered investment advisor. Olson Consulting LLC, offering advisory services and financial planning, is a state registered investment advisor.